Did you know that Brits don't live in apartments? Well, those who live in luxury might, but most of us don't use this word. And this got me to thinking how I actually have a very limited idea of how to describe where I live in detail or correctly or accurately. I constantly struggle when my friends ask me to describe my home. And this really proves the point of how fluency in any language, be it your native or non-native, is all about topic-specific vocabulary and how much practice you have forming that vocab into spoken sentences. So today, we're going to become fluent in describing houses in the UK, a native and a non-native together on the learning journey. And we're going to do this by trying to describe a number of different types of homes you'll typically find in the UK. If you're new to this face and this channel, then I'm Charlie and I like to have culture-based conversations while teaching you British English. And as I said, today we're focusing on British homes and how to describe them. So let's start with a cottage. Yes, think The Holiday, the film. Where a big shot in Hollywood, played by Cameron Diaz, swaps lives with a country-dwelling Kate Winslet, who lives in a quintessentially British cottage in the leafy county of Surrey, just outside London. So a cottage is always a standalone building, full of character and quirks. It's almost hard to imagine a brand new cottage being built in the UK. That is probably possible. But think thatched roofs, you know, the ones with straw that the big bad wolf blows down. Poor little piggies. You'll find cottages predominantly in the countryside. And I often think of the black and white timber framed ones, which date back to the Tudor period, which was around the 1500s when King Henry VIII ruled. You know him? The guy that had 6 wives, or got through 6 wives because he kept chopping their heads off. Charming guy, just like these Tudor style cottages. Then another style found more often in like southwest England, Cornwall, is a stone cottage. So not black and white, the colour of stones. And just imagine different sized stones stacked on top of each other to form 4 outer walls. Simple, right? But it must have been harder than I've described to go any higher than head height. I mean, stones are pretty heavy, aren't they? Because if you go into a cottage, they have very low ceilings. And because we've grown taller over the centuries with all the cow's milk and free healthcare and antibiotics. Does that help us grow taller? I don't think so. Anyway, we're taller now, right? And so yeah, it's going to be a lot of ducking and dodging the beams. Yeah, ducking your head anytime you move between rooms. But yeah, what else is there to say about cottages? They're cozy. Yes, they're cozy. Often have a fireplace, and they scream storybook charm. But be warned, many are old and can be cold, creaky, and perhaps haunted. But why do they exist? Well, they were originally working homes for agricultural labourers. That's why farm cottage goes hand in hand. But today they're seen as desirable, often expensive second homes. And you might hear a Brit say, "Oh, we've got a little cottage in Cornwall," which usually means a very expensive holiday home that sleeps 6, has Wi-Fi and rents at $2,000 a week in the summer. And that's a cottage, a British cottage. But treat this noun with respect. Don't think you can use it as a verb. And be very careful if you try to add the ing form to it. I'll be explaining that one in the flashcards for Premium and Academy members. If you wanted to describe a cottage, maybe you could say, oh, it's a Tudor-style cottage, exposed beams, cozy atmosphere, and a big fireplace. Very traditional. But yeah, honestly, 9 times out of 10, you'll not really hear people saying much more than, oh, it's just a cute little cottage in the countryside. That's pretty much what a native would say about a cottage. But there's a lot more to be said about other properties. So let's move on to talk about a bungalow. Yes, a bungalow. This is it's a funny word, isn't it? Bungalow. Bungalow. And before I bore you with the etymology that I just looked up for this video, it refers to a one-story detached house. So no stairs. Everything is on the ground floor. A great type of property for anyone who often forgets things when leaving the house. You don't want to be climbing those stairs endlessly. And I actually grew up in a bungalow. And then my parents, they extended into the roof. And that can be called a bungalow extension or a dormer bungalow, especially if you add these dormer windows that are vertical. And so they poke out of the roof, and they kind of remind me of a mini house inside of the roof. If you were to, draw a typical house as a kid, I wonder if we all have that typical drawing. But yeah, a large portion of the elderly population choose to downsize from their 4 or 5 bed detached family house to a bungalow as they can't be dealing with stairs anymore. And yeah, their kids, they will have flown the nest. Although, as house prices have just gotten out of control, young people are starting to see the appeal to a bungalow as they are more affordable and often have a good-sized garden. And as promised, this word, bungalow, is from Hindi. And it came about from the British colonial era in India to describe single-story homes built in the Bengali style. Yeah, who knew? Not me. I did not know that. Now, before we move on to one of the most sought-after types of homes in the UK, let me ask you something, okay? And be honest with yourself. Do you ever just watch English videos on YouTube, English video lessons like this one, and just hope that somehow your English will magically improve? I mean, I get it. I've done exactly the same as you with my Spanish studies, but the reality is this. People who revise and actively practice what they learn are up to 3 times more likely to actually retain new vocabulary and make real progress. And that's exactly why in these videos, I create a free PDF to go with them, just like this video. And it's packed with all of the house-related vocabulary we're learning today. 5 more types of builds that you'll want to get to complete the list of British homes. And then there's a quiz with questions in there to test your learning and turn passive watching into real vocabulary. And you can download it by using the QR code on screen right now, or click the link in the description box of this video or on the pinned comment below. And once you do that, it will take you to this screen. Fill out your name and your email to join my mailing list, and then I will be able to send you the PDF directly to your email inbox. But let's get on to the next type of home, which is a detached house. The British dream. Well, it was for my parents' generation, maybe a little less so these days, what with how appealing cities are now. You know, it's not just a good place to get a job in a factory. We've got endless coffee shops, restaurants, fashion brands, pubs, bars, theatres. You know, you've heard of a city, right? You know what a city involves nowadays, right? You know, in the 70s, God, it was just one factory in the middle of the city. So that's why they wanted to escape the city. But yes, the detached house, this is exactly what it sounds like, not attached to anything. So a standalone property, not connected to any other house. No shared walls, no neighbors stomping around above you, just, space, glorious space. It usually comes with a front garden, back garden, maybe a garage, or even a conservatory. Oh my God, a conservatory. Right. These are really weird, I think. These were all the rage when I was a kid. There's actually a good show called White Gold on Netflix that helps paint the picture of this craze. I encourage you to watch it. It's funny. It's really funny. It's a comedy drama. So during the 80s and 90s, there was a big housing boom and home improvement frenzy due to Maggie Thatcher's Right to Buy scheme, which was a huge moment. But I know you are not here for a history lesson, so I'll keep it brief. But Maggie Thatcher, one of the biggest, most famous prime ministers in the UK, decided to sell off a lot of the government-owned houses or properties, which meant that a lot of working class people went from being renters to homeowners for much less than market value. And with that moment, the idea of having a room made entirely of glass, supported by these white plastic frames, was added on to the home improvement of getting your windows double glazed or your doors upgraded. So you might want to imagine a slick Essex salesman in a shiny suit knocking on your mum's door in 1994, telling her that a conservatory, it'll add 20 grand to the value of your home. And it was easy money for these salesmen because they were in such high demand, and no one had realized that a room made entirely of glass in the UK would be far too hot in the summer and far too cold in the winter. And these salesmen, they had a really hard sell culture. I guess because the markup was so massive, meaning if something cost £100 to make, they could sell it at about £800. And they would do these cold calls. So they would just knock on your door and say, I can get you 30% off if you say yes today. Otherwise, you'll never be able to get a conservatory as big as the one from up the road. Oh, it's gorgeous. They love it. That family, they are loving it. So much light. It's great. So have we got a deal? So yeah, that was conservatories. And these days, most homes use them to store unused gym equipment, or it's just a bit of a dumping ground for furniture that they don't sit on anymore. So these are often on the edge of detached houses that haven't been renovated in the last 20 years. And aside from essentially having a greenhouse on the outside, you'll find multiple bedrooms in these detached houses, often with en suites. En suites, it's quite a posh word. Well, it's a French word, but anything French sounds posh in English. So they would have an ensuite bathroom, meaning a bathroom attached to a bedroom, basically. And then what else? Maybe even a study or a utility room. And then the normal things like a kitchen and lounge. But yeah, as I mentioned, in the UK, detached homes are often seen as a status symbol. It's the home you move up to, a sign you've made it, or that you've outgrown your semi. Behave. That's just childish. Just come on. They're more common outside of cities where there's space to build them. And unlike any other type of property, they're usually what we call freehold, meaning you own both the house and the land beneath it. And the opposite is a leasehold, where you only own the property but not the land that it's on, which is not what you want. And this comes up often with another type of property. We'll talk about that in a bit. If you're wondering the average price of a detached home in the UK, it's £460,000 in 2025. And in London, it could soar well over 1 million for something you'd actually still say, woof, this is a bit cozy in here. So if anyone says to you, oh, it's a 4-bed detached with a conservatory and a double driveway, you'll know that that's code for I'm doing all right for myself. Thank you very much. I mean, if they actually say double driveway, you have my permission to thump them. They should just say driveway if they even need to mention it. Don't say double driveway, just say driveway. And if you've sort of made it, not fully made it, because that would be a detached house. If you've sort of made it, you might have a semi-detached house, which is a pair of houses that share one wall. A bit like putting up a mirror to a sketch. It's like the identical side of a house. You've got your own front door, your own back garden, and your own slice of the British dream, but you're physically connected to one neighbour on one side. And this is very typical for suburban areas all across the UK. In towns, outer boroughs of London, or anywhere that had a big post-war housing boom, because they, all these men came back and they made love to they procreated with their other halves, and out popped a baby 9 months later, and then they were like, oh, we need a bigger house, and that created a housing boom. So we had the boomers moving into a housing boom, and an effective way was to create these semi-detached houses. And if you live in one, you might say, oh, we live in a 3-bed semi-detached. And I'll talk about why we say 3-bed, 2-bed, 1-bed, etc., and not the size. And this semi-detached house is probably a step up from a terraced house, or if you're lucky, the end of terrace house. So let's talk about them now. The good old terraced houses. These are incredibly common in British cities. They are the smaller, identical houses, all connected in a long row up and down the street, like little Monopoly pieces. If you've ever watched a soap opera like Coronation Street or EastEnders, you've definitely seen a terrace. And this is actually, it's a confusing word, because terrace can also mean an outdoor area that is paved and flat for people to sit and relax on. I'd say most Brits would call that a patio, that area, instead of a terrace. It's a patio for us, whereas Americans, they would say terrace. So when we say the word terrace, we're most likely talking about the row of houses that all look the same as one another. So as you can imagine, these share walls on both sides with both sets of neighbours. It's good insulation for the winter, and you get your own front door, maybe your own little back garden, but you're squeezed in like a jam sandwich between two slices of neighbour. Unless you're at the end of the loaf of bread, and you only have one set of neighbours because you have an end of terrace house. And that is when you start to consider getting your kid a musical instrument, maybe, because you've got, you don't have neighbours right next to that wall. You don't want to get them drums. We're not in a detached house. But yeah, an end of terrace house definitely comes at a slightly increased price than a terraced house. And this is where I'd like to delve a bit deeper, because I live in a terraced house, but I live on the bottom floor, which I believe would mean I should say we live in a 2-bed ground floor maisonette with a garden in a terrace. But you could also just say we live on the ground floor of a terrace. We live on the ground floor of a terrace. And I said a French word there, maisonette, which means a flat that's part of a house, but it has its own private entrance. And I think that's quite an important thing for some people. But yeah, we live in the bottom floor of a Victorian-style terraced house in the southwest of London. I'm not there yet, am I? I'm still not fluent in this area, but we can only try, right? And before we move on to the reason you clicked on this lesson, which was why you don't say you live in an apartment if you're in an apartment block in the UK. If the Building has 2 rooms downstairs and 2 rooms upstairs. So a lounge and kitchen, dining area downstairs, and then 2 bedrooms upstairs. That is known colloquially as a 2 up, 2 down. 2 up, 2 down. Oh, we live in a 2 up, 2 down. But yeah, let's talk about apartments and why we can't say this word. Well, culturally speaking, the word apartment sounds more luxurious than what we call a normal apartment, which is a flat. We call it a flat. If you call your home an apartment, then you're signaling to other Brits that you live in a more modern or luxurious, perhaps bigger space than a typical flat. And what do Brits not like doing? Bragging. Or at least not directly. I mean, some Brits love to brag. But generally speaking, we try to be more humble, right? And I actually got into the bad habit of saying apartment because I lived in America for a year, in Australia for 4. And I came back to the UK, people started to recoil when I said apartment. It was really, really subtle, but it is a thing. I mean, now as times evolve, we are getting more modern apartment blocks like the US. So that word is seeping into British homes, especially for estate agents, you know, those who are trying to sell the houses. They want to make it sound more desirable and nicer. So they might use this word. Oh, yes, it's a lovely apartment. Come and look at the apartment. But it's a flat. People call it a flat, right? So stick to that word. And if you're like me, you're endlessly curious about everything. The reason for this is because it comes from Old English and it means floor or dwelling, which refers to a home on one floor, whereas apartment is a French origin. And I guess it caught on when America was colonized. And you might also hear the term block, as in I live in a block of flats. And we also have studio flats, which is a flat, but it's actually just one bigger room that combines your bedroom, living room, and kitchen all in one, except the bathroom, for obvious reasons. God, that would be awkward if it was right next to the telly. So then we have a 1-bed flat, which means, well, you've made it, right? You're no longer watching TV where you sleep and poo. No, you don't poo. You've got a separate bedroom. Amazing, a 1-bed. So you go from studio to 1-bed. And this makes me want to point out that all of my students like to tell me the size of a property using actual measurements, which is perfectly logical. But for some reason, I rarely hear Brits use square meter or square feet. We simply just say how many bedrooms a property has, which is incredibly flawed, but it's worth noting because if a Brit asks you to describe your place and you say, oh, it's 60 square meters, they will most likely nod and smile and their mind is completely blank. We just don't know sizes like that. We just don't work in that way, or at least in my opinion, we don't. So they're just waiting for you to say how many beds it has. Some might be becoming more aware, and if they're in the market for a house, they might be more aware of the actual size of the place. But yeah, my advice is to speak in bedroom numbers to describe the size of a property. It's really stupid, but yeah, it's what's normal. So typically flats go from a studio to a 1-bed to a 2-bed to a 3-bed and maybe even a 4-bed, but any bigger and the property is likely a different type of build. Unless it's a penthouse, but this is getting a bit American. But yeah, one feature you'll often find in newer flats is the open plan layout, where the kitchen, dining area, and living room all flow together. Some could have a balcony if they're not on a ground floor, and if they are, they might have an outdoor space. And then going back inside, they might have an ensuite bathroom, which I mentioned earlier. What else comes in a block of flats? Well, depending on how modern and tall the block is, you'll have a lift to access your floor. And that's not an elevator. We say lift in the UK. Americans say elevator. And yeah, in older buildings, you may still have to haul your shopping up the stairs. And, I mentioned freehold, leasehold. Most flats, some flats in cities are leasehold, meaning you only own the flat, not the land it sits on, which is typically not a good thing. Most people want to own the land as well. So if you're buying a house, now you know. And then outside your flat, you'll probably have hallways and hopefully a shared garden and maybe even a roof terrace. Oh my God, terrace. That word keeps morphing into different things. A row of houses, terrace. A patio, like a flat area to sit on, terrace. And a roof terrace. Goodness me. But yeah, Americans use terrace for patio. Brits use terrace on its own, meaning a row of houses. And if you say roof terrace, that means a flat area on the roof that you can go and sit on. Sitting on the roof on top of a block of flats. But there we have it. From cozy cottages to lofty flats, bungalows with no stairs to detached homes and gated driveways. We've just been on a full-blown tour of British housing and hopefully added a whole new layer of vocab to your brain's living room. And don't forget, you can grab the free PDF that's packed with all the vocabulary from today's lesson, plus a bunch more extra types of British homes that I didn't cover in this video. Loads of example sentences to practice with and some fun quizzes to test what you've just learnt. So just scan the QR code right now or check the description of this video or the pinned comment to download it. And don't just nod along and say, yeah, I'll download it. Do it. Revise the phrases and actually practice saying them aloud. Because trust me, that's what makes the words stick in your brain. If you enjoyed this video, it does a world of good if you could give it a like. And if you want more videos like these, then subscribe to this channel. And if you're feeling really passionate about staying in the passive learning mode, then you'll probably love this video that's just popped up for you to watch right now. So I'll see you in that one. Bye.